Do you have a son, a daughter, a student who struggles in mathematics? Today I'm going to share some insight, not only for the obstacles for the students, but also for the teacher. See, I have a son right now who's been homeschooled for the last 3.5 years, and I'm trying to incorporate him back into his school for his 8th grade year so that he can graduate with his preschool buddies. And upon reaching out to the school, I discovered that they were starting a whole new curriculum as far as new textbooks and things like that, which they've been overdue for textbooks for a while, but everything seemed to be, running smoothly. Anyhow, I asked if I could come in to see the textbooks that the students will be using so that I can determine if he would be a better fit to jump into the algebra book, or if he should kind of repeat some of his skills at the 8th grade level. So upon going in, I spoke with some parents to find out kind of the feel for the school, how some of the new teachers are, what's been happening. And one thing that was really pointed out to me was the fact that kids not only in 7th grade, 8th grade, but also all the way down to 5th and 6th grade were all struggling in math last year, which put up a red flag to me. Why? Why are so many kids struggling? What happened here? Because when my daughter and my son left during the pandemic, things were okay. You have your good teachers and your not so good teachers. And again, it's not that they're a bad teacher or a good teacher. It's just how your child can communicate with them and respond to them, and if they're teaching in the same manner that really, jives with them. So I never want to just blame someone this is their fault, this is her fault. There's no one reason, and every student is completely different. All we know at this point, or all that I know at this point, is that there was a lot of frustrated students and a lot of frustrated parents at the same time, and it was to be addressed. They addressed some things in emails, and it didn't really get to a resolution. So my hope in putting out this video is to really, again, shed some light on what I know. I am a certified teacher, K through 12, with a math major. So yeah, I wanted to be like the little math guru in high school, the high school math guru teacher. Anyways, things kind of took a turn for me after I had a car accident and I had some head injuries. So I never really pursued my teaching degree. I'm more now into the health field and how we heal. But I still have a love for math, and I find it easy. I know some people find math easier and some people are more English. Don't ask me to write things. It just takes me forever. I can do it, but it takes me forever. But I think we can all learn math as long as we don't fall behind in it, and we're taught in a manner that just is a stepping stone from one year to the next. And I think a lot of kids fall off because math is a circular curriculum. So everything builds from year to year. And if you had not such a successful year one year and you just weren't able to pick up some of those skills, you're going to struggle a little bit the next year, and then the next year, and it will just keep snowballing. And it's not uncommon for kids to go through elementary school, make it through, really struggling at the end, and then get into high school. They place them in algebra because they said they passed all these grades, and they were okay, C's or whatnot, but they get to algebra and they just can't succeed because they don't have all the skills they need in order to address these problems. You have to have your multiplication, your division, your adding, your subtraction, your fractions, your all the elements together. You have to understand those in order to really be successful at algebra. So what's going to happen is they're going to enroll your child, and you're like, okay, and your child's going to be really stressed out. They're not going to be able to make it, and the teacher is going to reach out to the counselor and say, I'm sorry, but this student is really struggling. They don't know all the fundamentals, and then they were going to put them in a low math class. My hopes in putting this out is to educate everybody on that circular curriculum and what possibly can happen here and what we could do to possibly resolve this situation. So I'm hoping that everyone takes this in the right way. So when I looked at the books, I was excited to see the new books because that's me into numbers. But I first went to the algebra book because that was a book that I thought was going to be probably the most appropriate for my son, just because if he struggled a little bit, I could help him at home. However, when I opened the book, it looked like it was going to be a very quick curriculum. It was going to move at a fast pace. I also noticed like the vocabulary in the book, the wording, the verbiage of it was more geared for like an honors roll high school student. Not something our kiddos are used to and the books they have been learning from. So if my son came home with this book and say he learned the lesson in class, but he had to reference back because he forgot something, he wouldn't be able to comprehend this book on his own. And it would take adult intervention to make it happen. And I never like to leave things to the parents when it comes to math, especially as it becomes higher level. Because honestly, even if you were successful in math as a student, how many years ago was that? Like, you're not going to remember all those things, and no one expects you to remember all those things unless you still use them in your day-to-day life. So I always, as a teacher, put it upon myself to make sure the kids had the tools in their toolbox or the notes to reference or enough examples to reference so that they could be successful at home if they had some problems to do, and then come back and ask any questions they had. So right off the bat, I can tell you that the algebra book, the new one, I saw as great as that curriculum could be. It's not something where you can take the students from the level they were in another book. That other book, every manufacturer has a different pace. And the books they're used to is at a slower pace, and this next book is picking up here. So there are going to be skills that are lost like in between there. And if the kids don't pick those up, I don't care how much they struggle, and even if they pass the class, once they get to high school, they're going to put them back down because they lost those skills unless somebody picks them up somewhere. So I'm not recommending anybody pick up that book from the books they were, especially knowing that everyone said they struggled last year. Well, if they struggled last year, they're probably not even ready for the book they need this year. So they're really low and this book is really high. So then I reached out to the 8th grade level book. Like, okay, let's check this out, Opened up the book, and to my surprise, it looked like an English book. There were no numbers, there were no, from what I saw, like no real shapes. It didn't look like a math book. Everything was written out in paragraph form, and then there were lines to fill in like a paragraph to answer it. And I was like, oh no, like this, what is this? Like, what are they trying to teach them, but like worded out? And so when I did read one of the problems, it was asking to like visualize or draw a parallelogram, and then take that and then create another image next to it, and then measure the angles and describe. I don't even know. I couldn't even figure out what we were trying to compare. What's this other shape that they were supposed to compare to. Was it identical? Like it didn't say. There were pieces missing. Again, I was confused by it. So, and then it wants you to answer after you compare these two shapes. Well, first of all, if I couldn't get the shapes down on a piece of paper, I don't know how the students would get them down. And then to compare something, well, the kids have learned a lot of terminology up until this point. They've heard words, they've learned parallel, they've learned adjacent, they've learned these things. If you gave them the word and gave them a multiple choice, they can probably recall what those things are. But for a student to remember to describe something like, oh, I need to use the word adjacent to describe this, they're not going to be able to recall that unless they're like a genius. The book doesn't even lay out those words on the side to even prep them to say, try to use some of these, some of the things you've learned in the past to describe what's going on. So this book is not going anywhere. It looks primarily like they're focusing on more geometry stuff, but worded out, and statistics. Now, fine and dandy, I guess if the kids could struggle through that, if some of them can make it through that. But my biggest concern is we're prepping them for algebra in high school. That's not pre-algebra skill set. There's so much missing from that. So that's like setting the students up for disaster. My take on it is these two books, if the school wants to go ahead with this curriculum, they need to start with the younger grades and incorporate it so that they start at a young age and it builds on that foundation and it goes at that pace to reach them up here. Taking the 8th graders this year and pushing them into this next curriculum is just they're gonna get lost. And I don't even know if anyone's really opened the books yet. It sounds like everything's kind of at the last minute here. So I don't even, but I'm trying to put the insight, being a math teacher, where this is going to go and where this is going to lead. Because I know from talking to some of the parents, they're like, well, where do I put them? Do I put them in this? But they were struggling last year, but I want them to succeed and I want them to be in this in high school. Well, let me tell you, you have to get those basic skills down. And we have to figure out where the students hiccuped. And every student may be different. The benefit to us is that we are a small school. We have the ability to focus on those things, take a little bit more time in areas where the students need it, and spend less time when they don't need it and they're learning it quicker. You don't have that ability when you're in a class with 30 students. So that was one thing I wanted to address with the books. Now, if the students stay in their same book and then just progress, we still have the issue that all these students were struggling last year. So if we don't do something right away or something doesn't change, this is what I foresee. If we just wait one semester to see what's going to happen and then address it, these students lost a whole semester. If we have a plan of action to back these students up, locate what skills they're missing, what skills they're lacking, then we can take them through that, and it won't take long. I'm not saying like if they really screwed up in 3rd grade that we have to repeat 3rd grade. The kids are at a different level now, a different grade, a different level. They can compute things, they understand things quicker. So we find those things, we address them, even if it takes, part of that first semester to do. And then you'll be amazed that when everybody's on the same page, how quickly they can transfer up and progress and still end where they need to end to be successful in high school. And that is my hopes. Now, I can still homeschool. I have that choice. I don't mind homeschooling. I enjoy being with my child. He's learning well. And so what why I'm so passionate about that is because his friends are the ones that are going to either, it's going to make them or break them for high school. And so I'm kind of invested in this, and I want to put this out here, and I want to educate what I know with the math curriculum and how I see it. And hopefully everyone is taking something out of this. But even when it comes to like, when the pandemic first hit and I started homeschooling him, I noticed we were sticking with the same textbooks and everything, because just in case I reincorporated them right away. I didn't want it to be hard on the teachers. I didn't want it to be hard on him. I wanted to be like a smooth transition. But as he kind of got like interested in homeschooling and he was doing well, I created kind of my own curriculum. But when I did see him struggle in math, I was like, wait a minute, like, hold up, like, we gotta rewind here. So I did rewind him a little bit. And was he a little bit behind then? A little bit, but as soon as he got those skills, he zoomed forward and he accelerated past everybody else, which is amazing. And I've always, even when I was in the classroom, I saw the same things with the students. Math doesn't need to be complicated. It is a step-by-step process. Unfortunately, a lot of the books like to jump around, and that's when we lose the students. So that's why I decided not to use the textbooks as much, because I was able to formulate my own curriculum and I knew how to do the step-by-step thing and how to build on one thing after another. But, right now, my fear, and I'm going to put this out here because my son has a lot of this, like when he gets super excited or super stressed, he just kind of goes in a state of fight or flight. And if you're not aware what fight or flight is, it's basically, it was like our human instinctive nature. So if we saw a bear, we get scared and we'd flee. We flee as fast as we could. All your energy goes to your internal organs and everything, your adrenaline pumps to get you out of the situation. Well, the same thing happens to kids, and it happens to them in the classroom. And Justin had that. He had that a lot when he got anxious or stressed about something. And when you're in that state, you just draw a blank. You're unable to learn. It's just like in the healing process. You can't heal when you're in fight or flight. You can't learn when you're in fight or flight either. You blank out. So something fun like teachers did to like learn multiplication facts, they would do these 1-minute sheets, and you flip over your sheet and you fill in as many multiplication facts as you can until you got better and better and better with them. And kids got into it. They're like, yeah, did you make it? Did you make it? How many more did I answer today than yesterday? And that's kind of fun, because let me tell you, learning multiplication facts, it's not fun. I mean, you're memorizing. So we have to be creative and find ways to make it to promote it, to like get them intrigued to do it. So one thing I did with Justin, since even those minute things, as soon as he turned over the sheet of paper, he was so anxious that like he would forget the answers. So that wasn't really helping him. So I'm like, no, I gotta be creative here. I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? So I decided to play a game, pretty much a game. I was trying to keep his mode out of fight or flight. So the only way you can do that is, there's certain techniques. You could say 3 things that you're grateful for. When you're grateful, you're not fearful. When you're laughing, things like that. So I decided to I did a balloon. I blew up a balloon, and I would hit the balloon to him and say 6 times 6. And then he had all the way, the balloon kind of, floats in the air. To answer, when he came up with the answer, he hit the balloon back and said the answer. And then I would give him another problem. So if I knew it was like a difficult problem for him, I would bounce the balloon up higher so it had more time to come down. And if I knew he kind of knew the answer quick, I'd hit it to him quick because he had to come up with the answer quick. But this did a lot. It wasn't just a game for mathematics and keeping him out of the fight and flight. There's a lot of coordination, so you're using your left brain and your right brain at the same time as he's also trying to concentrate on the number. It's great for kids who just like can't sit still because it gives them that extra energy out. There's a lot of coordination between the tap on the fingers and your brain. There's tons of studies like that helps like people with Parkinson's. I mean, I can go into all these little details, but what I'm saying is, it's not just the balloon game. There's a lot of benefits behind it. Can you bring a balloon into a classroom? Sure, I guess if there's not a lot of students. But it's something parents can do at home with the kids just to make sure they're still getting the facts. It's like playing a volleyball game, but like, with facts. You can do it with spelling words. You can, odd and even numbers. You can switch it up and it becomes fun and they learn. Another strategy I used was like if you had drums, if you didn't have drums, like 2 wooden spoons on a pillow, you could tap and do the answers, or spelling. I used to do spelling words the same way, to spell the word, sand, S-A-N-D, and you're drumming it. And again, that has a lot of feedback to the brain and using your brain in a different way, and they get it. Another really fun thing I used to incorporate, and they used to do it all the time when I was younger, was like around the world. So 2 students stand up and then you hold up like a flashcard. It could be like addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, anything. And they would have to, whoever answered the answer first then got to then stand up next to the next student. So the one student who didn't get it right sits down, they approach the other student, and they keep going around the room, and then you kind of have a winner at the end. But now once the kids are so intrigued with that, they want to do good with that. So when you're playing with them at home and doing something like the balloon game, they have a purpose. They're like, I really need to learn these facts because I want to, when I get challenged, I want to be able to be faster than the other person. Those are quick little things, and there's always like little 5-minute segments of time, 2-minute segments of time in a classroom where it's dead air. Well, instead of students just sitting there, utilize those times to make it fun and intriguing. And I know some of that is like not really geared for 8th grade, but they still have fun doing it. Like, you'd be surprised. And when I pull them out, I think I was in like my daughter's class for like a homeroom mom at like a Valentine's Day party or something like that. When she was really young, she was in the public school for about a year. And I asked the teacher, I'm like, do you have flashcards? She's like, flashcards? She took out these flashcards that were like yellow. And I was like, oh my goodness, you don't use your flashcard? She goes, no. I'm like, what about around the world? Like, what a quick, fun game. Kids loved it. So there are ways to incorporate things all the time. I always tell parents, if the kid asks for something, if your child asks for something like for dessert or a snack or whatnot, or wants to do something, be like, do you remember what 6 times 6 was? Or, can you tell me how to spell this? Or use those times as your benefit, because they're eager to get something, so they'll be eager to figure it out or recall something that they needed to learn for school. So those are all methods I use that are helpful, and I hope that may be helpful to some parents. I know I heard that a lot of parents were using tutors and things like that. I used to tutor myself. The tutors can help with certain skill sets, but we have to have a good plan of action where they can really see. Like when I sat down with a student, I started tutoring like back in high school, math for kids, and I really needed to see that they had a progressional curriculum in order to help them achieve, because I can teach them with certain skill sets, but if their curriculum is all over the board and doesn't build on each other, then they weren't going to be as successful. So sometimes you had control over that, sometimes you didn't. Tutors are always great, but sometimes when they can't see the full picture, they're just helping them with the moment, but it's not building the foundation for long-term success. It's a moment in time. So With all this being said, I'm hopeful that, the school, the parents, the teachers, we're all able to come together and figure out what is going to be best for these 8th graders. I know there's a whole, the principal mentioned, I have like this 5-year goal, this 5-year plan to really redo and enhance everything to get more students into the school, which is great. I love that. I love that she's, she actually has a goal in mind. But right now, the goal for the 8th grade parents is to make sure our students are prepared for high school. And I have no problem if someone wants to reach out to me and ask me, like, what do you think of this? Do you think this would be beneficial? Do you think this program, what would you recommend? I'd be more than happy to share my insights. Again, you guys are going to do what you think is best, and then us as parents will probably just have to decide, is this what we want? Or we can all kind of work together. I think because it's such a small class, I think that would probably be the best thing. I do have a program I put my son into. He was old school, so he really liked, the board and me working one-on-one with him and showing problems. But towards the end of last year, I did enroll him into like an online program, which I also sat next to him to do because I was curious how this worked, and I wanted to see how the teaching was and whatnot. I actually really liked it, and he actually really stepped up to the plate to see how he would, learn from, if he's going to incorporate into high school or something. Sometimes they do that stuff. And he did have the ability to pick up, and he was taking notes. And I think it's so crucial that these students go home with a really good, at least understanding before they tackle their work. Because otherwise we're just setting up, we have parents yelling at each other, trying to figure it out. They're stressed out. That stresses the student out. The student's stressed to go back to school. The teacher's a little frustrated, why didn't you do your work? You had this here. Why don't you understand it? They're not able to communicate why they didn't understand it. It's a big world of fight or flight. And fight or flight, we don't learn. So I strongly hope that all this can be settled, and my hopes is that my son can come back to school and we all have a successful year. And if I need to be called upon to work with the kids a little bit, or maybe putting the kids in their old classroom last year for math is not going to be the solution. They may just freeze with the same teacher, with the same atmosphere, because that's where they left off. It may be beneficial to just keep them in their homeroom classroom if you can. I don't know if the homeroom teacher is comfortable teaching math. Not everybody, especially at that level, is comfortable doing different things. But I think there's a lot of alternatives out there and a lot of ways we can get these students to succeed. So I'm hopeful that this brought some insight to everyone, and anybody out there in the world who's dealing with challenges with math. Math doesn't need to be difficult. The kids don't have to do hours and hours of math work. In fact, after a certain period of time, they all get frustrated. They all get tired. And again, there's a lot into the background of learning. Are the kids getting this adequate sleep at night? Are they eating the right foods? Are they intolerant to foods and then going to school and they just can't function and they can't absorb? All those things roll into this. And sometimes you don't see it as much in English class as you do in math class. So those are also things that need to be addressed. And like I said, every student is individual, but again, my hopes is we all come together and make this a great year and a successful year for our students. Thank you for listening.